started this series a few weeks ago called Upload. And we've been thinking about this idea that, there are things that you and I ought to bring with us from one season to the next. And there are things that we ought to leave behind. And sometimes we see the things that we carry from year to year, and we say to ourselves, I wonder if that's ever going to change, or I wonder if we can actually ever break free of that, or whatever it might be. And we were talking about this idea of excuses, the excuses that we all make, present company included. I have to admit to you that in kind of working through this series, I've been looking at the mirror, as I think about this, because I think it applies really to all of us. And I'm finding a common problem that exists, particularly in my own life when it comes to making excuses. And perhaps you might find it true in your life too. I suspect that some of you will. I'm not sure when in our lives we begin lying to ourselves. It's probably earlier than we imagine. I'm not sure when we stop lying to ourselves, but it probably coincides with our breathing. And we get really good at catching other people lying, but we're not so good catching ourselves lying, not to other people, to ourselves. By the things that we say to ourselves and the things that we believe about ourselves. And here's the thing. When it comes to other people, we look at lying as inexcusable. But lying to ourselves, it's kind of a whole new level of this. It's totally ridiculous and absolutely confusing. And when we ask ourselves, well, who's really lying to who? How many selves do we have? If you're thinking to yourself, Dan, I don't lie to myself. Maybe you just did. And you just don't know it because you're really good at it. And we all are. And one reason we're really good at it is this. We don't call the lies we tell ourselves lies. We call them something else. We kind of dignify and sanctify our lives, and we just call them reasons. Which seems reasonable because nobody wants to appear unreasonable. And we come up with reasons. I was late because of the traffic. That's reasonable. Actually, I stayed up later than I should have, couldn't put my phone down, so I actually overslept, but I'll stick with, I had a really hard time falling asleep, and for some reason my alarm didn't go off. Guess what we just did? We lied to ourselves. And whoever we're going to tell that story to, you have a reason for why you blew up, why you lost your temper, why you don't eat better, why you're leaving, or why you're staying. I'll let you fill in the blank here. There's a reason you have to fill that in. I certainly can look at my own life and come up with a number of things. The reason you give for why you blank so much may not be the actual reason. The actual reason may be a secret that you're keeping from yourself to keep yourself from having to face the truth about yourself. And it's crazy, but we all do it. We all do it. So I am not preaching down to you today. If not for the live stream, I would come and sit on the floor and say, let's have a chat together. Because this applies to me, and it applies to you too. And so what we do is, instead of telling ourselves the truth, we manufacture and we create and we make excuses. And then we disguise them as reasons because we want to be reasonable. So maybe we should call it like everybody but us sees it. Because I find, and maybe you might have had this experience too, when I finally come to the place of calling myself out, all the people around me are going, finally. Because they see it. And the people around you know when you're not telling yourself the truth. And they know because you know when they're doing it as well. And they see our reasons for what they really are. Paper walls. Not much to them. So today, we're in part 3 of uploading. As I said to you earlier on, there's things that we carry from one season to the next, good habits and good friends, and there are things that we ought to leave behind, namely our excuses. They're like paper walls. From a distance, they look solid, impenetrable. They look and they feel like actual reasons. And as we get closer and we get honest, we realize that they're just things that are holding us back. And over time, our excuses become becauses. They're becauses because we retreat to them. We hide behind them. We defend ourselves with them. Why don't you? Why haven't you? Why do you always? Why do you keep on doing that? Why don't you start? Why don't you finish? Why did you quit? Why don't you just tell him? Why don't you just tell her? Why do you stay in it? Why are you walking away from it? Why don't you forgive him? Why don't you forgive her? We always have a because. And often our because isn't the cause. Our because is often masquerading as an excuse. So in this series, we're asking this question. Is it possible you're missing out because you've walled yourself in? You've closed yourself off. You've said, nobody is getting behind this wall. I'm not going to be hurt again. I'm not going to be let down again. I'm not going to be taken advantage of again. I'm not going to make myself vulnerable again. And we live behind this paper wall of obstacles that we can't move beyond. And what's happening is we think it's keeping us safe, but it's actually preventing us from walking into the fullness of relationships, opportunities, maybe even better health. Is it possible that some of your becauses are excuses and they're constructed of things someone told you or called you or labeled you? And is it possible that we've invented reasons to defend our certain behaviors, reactions, overreactions, or why we avoid certain people? You immediately defend it with becauses. Because I went through this. Because they remind me of so-and-so. Because I'm not going to let myself be hurt again. And is it possible that some of those reasons aren't the reason? That there's something else going on? And if so, there's something on the other side that you're missing out on. Because over time, it's possible for an excuse to become a king. Our lives are not as compartmentalized as we think. Excusing unhealthy behaviors in one area of our lives often creates unhealthy behaviors in other areas of our lives. Excusing your overreactions impacts your relationship. Making excuses for bad financial and health habits erodes your credibility and people draw conclusions about you. It all flows together. But here's the problem. There's a single excuse or a wall that you're living behind or you've made for so long that it's impacting your entire life. It's keeping you from moving forward relationally, spiritually, or simply in terms of personal growth. Is it possible there's something that you've turned into a reason that's just an excuse? We have this verse. In fact, Jesus was approached one day, and they were trying to back him to a corner. Of course, in the Old Testament, there's 600 plus laws, but probably even more than that when you really shake it down. And they corner him one day, and they said, we want to hear from you, Jesus. You're going around, people are following you. They're hearing what you have to say. What's the greatest law? At the end of the day, what should we all be thinking about? And he says, this is the great Shema. You've heard this. He said, you will love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And he goes on, and the second is like it. And you will love your neighbor as yourself. Now you may think, what in the world does that have to do with what you're talking about today? This is why we're talking about this in church, because there's a relationship between our excuses and our ability to follow Jesus fully. You cannot follow both. You can't make excuses. The King or the Lord of your life and follow Jesus at the same time, because one of them is going to build a wall around you, and one of them is going to tear that wall down. And when you follow Jesus through the Gospels, you'll discover that he was constantly leading people from darkness into light. And we talk about this idea of lying to ourselves. What happens when you're confronted on a lie and the truth is shown? It's kind of like somebody turns the light on, isn't it? And now what was done in the dark, it's now come out into the light, and we see the truth of what it is. But the light can be terrifying. It can be threatening. It can be embarrassing. Light can also be liberating. Ask any of your AA or your NA friends about turning the light on and exposing the lies, especially the ones we tell ourselves. Because here's the thing, lies will hold you back. They hold us back and they leave us in the dark, and you know that to be true because of the people that are closest to you. How many of you have known somebody in your life, maybe it was a child or a relative or a good friend or whatever it might be, and in your mind you're thinking to yourself, don't you see what this is doing to you? Can't you see what this is doing to your life? Can't you see how this relationship is affecting you? Can't you see how this pattern of decision making, this pattern of behavior is taking you down a path that's not only going to be not good for you, but it's not going to be good for anybody else? And we say that, and if you point out what's obvious, sometimes they can't see it, and they run to their paper walls. Well, you don't know what I've been through. You don't know what this was like, and I went through that, and so did this, and I've experienced that, and you've never, and we go through all of it, and they just don't see it. And here's the thing, what's true of them is also true of you and me. Lies will hold you back, but Jesus said this, and this is why this is a spiritual issue. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. Lies hold you back, but truth sets you free. How amazing that 2,000 years ago, Jesus makes this very point after making a major over-the-top claim that gets him into trouble with the people around him. I just built an entire case for you around the fact that lies will hold you back, truth will set you free. Jesus said that, and prior to saying that, here's what he says. We have it written down in the Gospel of John. I am the light of the world. Who would ever say that? And what if it's true? What if Jesus came to lead the people of the world, you and me, out of darkness and into the light? What if he came to shed light on your excuses so that you can be everything he's called you to be and reach your full potential instead of living bogged down in the things that you've told yourself? All of a sudden, when we read verses like when Jesus says, I've come that you would have life and that you would have it more abundantly. And we look at it in light of this, it's almost as if Jesus is saying, look, you let me turn the light on your lies and on your excuses and on all the things that have held you back, and I will show you what abundant living looks like. He says, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me. Our mission as a church is to create followers of Jesus who love God, who love each other, and who serve the world. He's invited people not just to believe in him or believe things about him, but to follow. Jesus doesn't need any more admirers. Admiring Jesus is not going to make a difference in your life, in the world, or in your relationship. Or simply believing in or believing things about Jesus are not going to make a difference in your life or the world or your relationship. Jesus says, I want you to follow me. And because of the invitation, we can almost guess what comes next. If Jesus is the light of the world and invites us to follow, he says this, I'm the light of the world. You follow me. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Jesus is saying, I want to light up the dark places and lead you through your paper walls. You follow me because I'm going to take you somewhere. And John tells us that when Jesus said this, the Pharisees, those are the religious leaders of the day, the Pharisees challenged him. Here you are, appearing as your own witness. Your testimony is not valid. In other words, you're not the light of the world, you're crazy. And later on in the same conversation, Jesus says, if you hold to my teaching, if you remain in me, stay with me, walk with me, pursue me, embrace what I'm teaching you, you are really my disciples. Then, if you hold to my teaching, if you follow it, if you walk with me, you stay committed to it, determined, facing the same direction, then you will know the truth. You'll recognize it. You'll stop resisting and you'll receive it. And in that moment, you will know the truth. And you've all heard this from very many of you. You will know the truth, and then the truth will set you free. Good job. You paid attention in catechism. And the truth will set you free. It will set you free to see. You'll see the way God sees you, and you will begin to see your walls for what they are, nothing. There's nothing there. There's no weight there. And Jesus' original audience immediately responds by making excuses. You know why? Because they're just like us. They answered him, we are Abraham's descendants and have never been slaves of anyone. How then can you say that we will be set free? I mean, what? They had a Roman governor. Before that, they were ruled by the Seleucids, the Persians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Egyptians. These guys were constantly under the thumb of some governing authority. And now you're saying we've never been slaves? It's easy to criticize them. But we're the same way. When someone implies that you're a slave to your excuses or imprisoned by your paper walls, the first thing we think of is, not me. Or John 8:33, I've never been a slave of anyone or anything. How can you say that I'll be free? And perhaps Jesus' reply to you and to me would be the same one that he gave to the Pharisees. Ready? Very truly, I tell you, everyone who sins is a slave to sin. I'm going to ask you a question. Ready? How many of you have ever said this to yourself? Raise your hand. Okay, so you're all slaves to sin. Who made you do that? We all struggle with moments where we go, where did that come from? Why did I say that? Why did I react that way? I cannot believe I just treated so-and-so like that. Why do I keep doing this to myself? So he goes on, he says, so here's the deal. If the Son sets you free, if you choose to follow the light of the world, that's my wife's phone going off. Okay. If you choose to follow the light of the world and allow him to light up the lies that you believe, you'll be free indeed. If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. You'll be free. You'll be free to name an excuse for what it is, and you'll find yourself free to push through the paper walls. You'll be free to move forward in life to the life that God's called you to live. You'll be free to acknowledge your fear and acknowledge your insecurities. See, here's the thing, and this is why I'm talking about this in church. Our excuses excuse us from engaging with God. And if our mission is to love God, love others, and serve the world, then we need to turn the light on in this. Our excuses excuse us from engaging God. They excuse us from engaging with others. Some of you have relationships you're unable to move into the fullness of because of the excuses that you've made. And some of you have relationships waiting for you because of the excuses you've made and not walking away from the ones that are holding you back. And you're going to keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, hoping that at some point the results will be different. It's a little quote I heard a while ago that said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and hoping for different results. This doesn't work. Paper walls make us small because our excuses excuse us from loving others. Isn't it true that the people who hurt you have excused their behavior? They couldn't see it or wouldn't see it for what it was. They manufactured an excuse for what they did. They never owned it. They never apologized. Their paper walls enslaved them to their self-centered ways, and you paid for it. I don't think you want to be like that. Perhaps you are, but you don't know. And we may unintentionally hurt people because of what we're unwilling to let go of. Paper walls make us small. They enslave us to our self-centeredness because here's the key. When I can't see I'm wrong, I stay wrong. When I can't see that I'm wrong, I stay wrong. And I need to allow someone to turn the light on, to let me see my situation for what it is. You'll excuse your life away. You'll excuse bad habits away. You'll excuse your family, your health, your peace, your call, your faith in God. But there's a better way. Jesus said, I'm the way and the truth and the life. In the first century, it wasn't called being a Christian. It was called being a follower of the way. Follower of the way. And Jesus invites you to follow him out of the darkness and into the light. Here it is. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. Do you know what that looks like? It looks like me seeing the speck in your eye, but quickly being reminded of the log in my own eye. It sees me, as my grandma used to say, pointing one finger at you while three of them are pointing back at me. It causes me to see that when I'm criticizing you or putting you down, what I'm actually trying to do is compensate for the insecurities I have so I can prop myself up. Instead of looking what needs to change in me and allowing Jesus to turn the light on. And we see it in friendships, we see it in relationships, we see it in the workplace, we see it in ourselves, we see it in politics. It's everywhere. And maybe we ought to take a look at ourselves, because you want to know what this looks like when we do? It looks like forgiveness. You're not going to sit back and suffer from the bitterness inside of you. Jesus, you follow me, and we're going to go through. And as I forgave you, you're going to forgive them. And you're going to forgive yourself. And you're going to initiate reconciliation even though it wasn't your fault. And you know who's going to be set free? You. You're going to admit that you're afraid and you're insecure and that you've been hurt and that you have a right in human terms to be angry, that you feel insecure and unsafe in the situation. And it's going to be terrifying, but it's going to be okay because you are going to be free. Isn't that how you want to live? Do you want to change the world and just make a dent? Follow and allow Jesus to light up your life. And on the other side of all this mess, you'll be a better person. And in a position, by God's grace, to make a difference in the world. Is it possible you're missing out because you've walled yourself in? Is it possible that you've shut somebody out because you've walled yourself in? And if I asked you why, you probably have 1,000 good reasons. But maybe your reasons are just excuses. Maybe it's time to move beyond them. Now, if we were in an evangelical, non-denominational church, somebody would approach the piano at this point, they'd start playing quietly, and I would give an altar call and give you this opportunity to say, God, today's the day. But we believe here that our relationship with God starts in the waters of baptism, where God comes to us and does something for us we could not do for ourselves. He comes and he calls us his own, marks and seals us with the cross of Jesus Christ, and sets us apart and calls us his children. That's where faith begins. And so here's what we're going to do. On Ash Wednesday, at the beginning of the service, we're going to have baptisms. And some of you have never taken this step. And this is your opportunity. It's your opportunity to come to a place where God will meet you in a profound way and begin this work of building faith in your life. Some of you are saying to yourself, Dan, I need a fresh start. I need that defining moment where I say, God, I'm walking forward. So I want to invite some of you to affirm your baptism with water in the same way. Just simply say, God, as a reminder today of what you started in my life so many years ago, the thing I don't even remember it. I'm affirming it today, that I am yours and you are mine. And that's what we're going to do this year for the first part of Ash Wednesday. We're going to come back to the place where it all began. And then we're going to end our time marked and sealed with the cross of Jesus forever. Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You follow Jesus, and you'll be free to see. You'll be free to be who God created you to be. And if that sounds like preacher talk, I get it. You may be encouraged to know that you're not alone. And by the way, when Jesus wrapped up this little talk, you know what happened? They picked up stones to stone him. But he slipped away, only to return another day to give his life away. Because Jesus is the light and life of the world. Is it possible that you're missing out because you've walled yourself in? Is it possible that you and I are disguising our excuses as reasons? Are you willing to admit what you suspect? That those are just paper walls. I'm not sure when we begin lying to ourselves, but we all do it. And Jesus invites us to leave our fact-free excuses behind and to face up to the terrifying but liberating truth about ourselves, our interior lives, our attitudes, our insecurities, our past. And Jesus says, if you follow me, you will see the truth, and the truth will set you free. So I want to give you some questions to think about as you go today. Some of you are going to go out to breakfast, or you're going to get together with other people, or maybe you're going to go home and have a meal. But let me give you some things to think about. Number one, have you ever caught yourself lying to yourself? What enabled you or forced you to see the lie for what it was? And by the way, this is one of those free moments where if you want to take your camera out and take pictures of these, you can do that. But have you ever caught yourself lying to yourself? Here's the second question. Did either of your parents excuse a habit or a character defect? And if so, did that ever impact your family dynamic? Because sometimes we carry those things with us. I don't know what your home life was like. Number three, would you commit John 8:12 to memory? I'm giving you homework. Would you commit this to memory? I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will never walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. I'd love for you not only to memorize this, but to begin to pray it. Lord Jesus, teach me what it means to follow you. Teach me what it means to walk forward in freedom. Teach me what it means to leave my excuses behind me, to walk into the fullness of what you have for me. And if following Jesus results in pushing through our paper walls and leaving our excuses behind, then following him will certainly make our life better and make us better at life. Almost immediately. Let's pray. I've said many times, God, I cannot imagine where my life would be without Jesus. And yet I still do this. I make excuses for not eating better or taking care of myself, or I make excuses for building a wall to sometimes keep people out because I get afraid. We all do it. To varying degrees, we all do it. And then you come along and you shine a light on that stuff, not in a condemning way or in a shameful way. You shine a light on it and say, hey, you see this? You take my hand. I'm going to walk you through it. And you're going to come out on the other side of it stronger and better and more secure and more hope-filled because you know me and I've come to set you free. I pray for my friends today and my friends that are watching online that the leading, the guiding, the driving pursuit of our lives would be loving you, Jesus, and allowing you to love us fully. I pray for my friends here today that have never been baptized, that perhaps this Ash Wednesday would be the day. And for friends today who are saying, you know, God, it's a new season. It's time to walk forward. It's time to leave some things behind and walk ahead. I want to draw a line in the sand, and I want to go back to a moment where everything changed and affirm that moment where you called me your own. And I pray for my friends who will do that this Ash Wednesday. And all of us will come and will go, leaving this place marked with the cross of Jesus forever, because we are yours. God, get us past our excuses and the lies that we tell ourselves, that we could live life more fully, love others more fully, and walk with you abundantly. I pray all this in the name of Jesus.